You probably think smoking is a modern habit, something that came along after the Industrial Revolution. But humans were deliberately inhaling smoke 30,000 years ago, and what they were smoking was far more interesting than you'd expect. We know this because archaeologists cracked open a 2,700-year-old tomb and found 2 pounds of cannabis that had somehow stayed green. It was a shaman's tomb, and whoever buried him made sure he wouldn't run out on the other side. But that wasn't the only plant, and that was far from the only reason. The story starts about 12,000 years ago when humans were just figuring out farming. They found a plant you could turn into rope, clothes, food, oil, and medicine. Not a crop, a Swiss Army knife growing from the ground. One of the oldest Chinese medical texts recommended cannabis for everything from joint pain to malaria. From China, it spread along the Silk Road. Merchants carried silk spices and apparently something else entirely. The oldest proof of intentional smoking turned up high in the Pamir Mountains at a burial site called Jirzankal. Inside 8 ancient tombs, researchers found wooden braziers with charred stones that had been used to burn cannabis. And this wasn't just whatever grew on the hillside. It was way stronger than wild plants in the area. They were choosing the good stuff on purpose. They heated the stones, laid the cannabis on top, and everyone breathed in the smoke together while they buried their dead. They were hotboxing funerals 2,500 years ago. Around that same time, a Greek historian named Herodotus was traveling Central Asia and ran into nomads called the Scythians. The Scythians were legendary warriors who rode horses, carried bows, and apparently took their smoke sessions very seriously. Herodotus watched them set up small tents, toss cannabis onto red-hot stones inside, and breathe in everything that came off. And Herodotus wrote the whole thing down. He said the fumes were so great no Greek vapor bath could surpass it, and the Scythians were delighted. Is it just me, or does he sound a little jealous? For a long time, historians figured he was exaggerating. Then, in 1947, a Soviet archaeologist excavated frozen Siberian tombs, sealed in permafrost for over 2,000 years. Inside, tent frames, heated stones, cannabis seeds, exactly what Herodotus described. He wasn't making anything up. Then in 2013, another Scythian tomb turned up with 7 pounds of solid gold cups inside. When they tested the residue, they found cannabis and opium. Ancient warriors were mixing substances out of gold cups 2,400 years ago. But the Scythians weren't alone. Every culture that came across this plant found a reason to keep it. And the reason is, your body was already wired for it before you ever touched the plant. In India, they weren't just using it, they were worshipping it. One of Hinduism's biggest gods, Shiva, is called the Lord of Bhang, a drink made from cannabis leaves. In China, around 200 AD, a physician named Hua Tuo mixed cannabis with wine, gave it to patients, and performed surgery while they felt nothing. 1,800 years before modern anesthesia. And in the Congo, a warlike tribe discovered cannabis and did something nobody expected. They stopped fighting, renamed themselves the Benariamba Sons of Hemp, and turned their territory into a place called Lubuku, which meant friendship. Their greeting became Moyo. The word meant 2 things at once, hemp and life, one word for both, because to them, there was no difference. Even in ancient Israel, researchers found cannabis residue on altars from a 2,700-year-old shrine, mixed with animal dung to keep the burn slow enough to release the smoke properly, which means whoever prepared this knew exactly what they were doing. Before Europeans started colonizing the Americas, cannabis had been a backbone crop in Europe for centuries. Ships ran on it. The entire age of exploration was held together by hemp fiber. When settlers arrived, the government kept asking farmers to grow hemp. Nobody wanted to. The Virginia Assembly eventually stopped asking and passed a law making it mandatory. Then in 1930, a man named Harry Anslinger became head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He held the job for 32 years. He stopped calling it cannabis and started calling it marijuana because the foreign-sounding word scared people, and scaring people was the whole point. He asked dozens of doctors what they thought. Most said cannabis wasn't dangerous. He ignored all of them and went with the one who agreed. In 1970, Nixon put cannabis on Schedule 1, the same category as heroin, a plant humans had been growing since before they learned to write. Years later, Nixon's own domestic policy advisor, John Ehrlichman, said in an interview that the administration wanted to go after 2 groups, anti-war protesters and black communities. In 1988, the DEA's own judge spent 2 years reviewing all the medical evidence and concluded cannabis should not be classified alongside heroin. The DEA rejected his recommendation and kept it exactly where it was. Cannabis has been part of human life for 12,000 years. It's been illegal for about 90. That's less than 1%. For virtually all of history, this plant was just there. You made rope from it in the morning and burned it at a funeral in the evening. A tribe rebuilt their whole world around it and greeted each other with a word that meant hemp and life in the same breath. And that shaman in the desert, the one with the harp and 2 pounds of cannabis, he didn't know about drug schedules or political agendas. He just knew the plant did something worth keeping. And the people who loved him made sure he'd never run out. Subscribe for more stories about the things that have always been with us.